let's move to the lessons that you take from that era in Italy, and it is what it is that well, you tell us.
Okay. So, of course, the situation is complicated, and there are major differences, again, because the political system is quite different. But what I would suggest is that the first thing that one should avoid is precisely to transform Trump into some sort of demon that one has to keep away from the government at all cost. Not because, contrary to Zingales, I'm not saying this because I'm suggesting that we should not oppose Trump. On the contrary, I think that now it is absolutely urgent to create social coalitions, large social coalitions, possibly on a national level, on various issues. For example, in defense of migrants, in defense of the healthcare, with all its limitations, system. So I think this has to be done, but with the idea that we are not in a situation in which everything is better than Trump, in the sense that then we have to accept every kind of neoliberal policy, provided that we can get rid of Trump. Because this I think is a recipe for disaster. In other words, just to use a slogan, I think that lesser evilism has actually produced the worst in Italy, and I'm afraid that it could produce the worst in the States too. In other words, lesser evilism doesn't address the causes for Trump's success, but actually makes them worse, and therefore creates the conditions for actually strengthening of Trump's power. So I think that building social movements, social coalitions, autonomous from the Democratic Party, and very clear about the defense of social rights and the defense of liberties and anti-racist politics, anti-sexist politics. I think this is what we should do in the next period.
So, I mean, in other words, if we're looking at, let's say, this infrastructure bill, for example, right? I mean, because we don't have the same opportunity, he's going to be, I mean, unless something irregular happens, he's going to be the president for the next 4 years, no matter what. But so the real question becomes, how is he fought on grounds like, let's say, for instance, the infrastructure bill, which is going to be the first thing. I mean, I think, like, it's clear, it seems to me, that when it comes to getting rid of the Affordable Care Act and with what they're talking about, at least what the plan of the new Health Human Services appointee is, or nominee, I should say, at this point, getting rid of Medicaid expansion. I mean, that's, these are sort of no-brainers here, right? I mean, it's you're going to fight those.
Yeah.
But when it's something like the infrastructure bill, where there are some things in it that appeal to those of us left of center, we've got to be careful about subscribing to it because it's Trump's, or is it because it happens to be a huge privatization scheme, or both?
Of course, I mean, one should see the content of the bill. I'm very suspicious that it's going to be a good bill. But
right. Let's assume it looks like his plan. Okay, let's assume, just for the sake of argument, so that we have some sort of like tangible markers here, that it is a huge privatization scheme where we provide loans to private entities to build things that they can monetize. And we give them the rights to monetize it. So it would all go towards, the most trafficked roads, and it would just be owned by a private entity, and they could collect the tolls for it, and we would give them the loan to build it. Let's just assume that's what it is, because that's basically the outlines that we see from his plan. If it's something like that, do we oppose it because it's Trump? Do we oppose it because of the nature of the bill? If Trump came out with, like, we're just going to borrow money, and we're going to build things, and it's going to be public. It's going to be the greatest genuine expansion of public infrastructure in 60 years. Do we go along with that? Give us a sense of that.
I mean, what you are presenting is actually not really a public infrastructure, because it would be managed by the private sector anyway, with the system of tolls and so on. So already this, I think, we can, already this is an element of criticism. If we want to build a public infrastructure, then let's build a real public infrastructure that is not based on profit making. Because clearly, private companies will need to make a profit on this, and this will increase the tolls, and it will actually affect people. But besides this, so here is the issue that I'm afraid that the idea that of supporting of a large project of infrastructure building because it creates jobs and so on, it would be an attempt to appeal to the white working class that felt abandoned by the Democratic Party, especially by Clinton, that didn't feel represented and so on. Now, the cost of doing this, however, would be that of legitimizing and accepting a government that is going to have incredibly bad politics concerning migrants, concerning racialized people, concerning women and so on. So, who are also the people who will probably be willing to mobilize in the next months against Trump and on issues that have to do with the defense of social rights and liberties and so on. So honestly, I would really, if we are talking about, for example, Sanders or the left around Sanders and so on, I would be very careful about creating, let's say, a distance between the decisions that are made in the Congress and the sincere and legitimate worries of racialized people, LGBT people, women, and a sector of the working class that is honestly worried about what Trump may do. So, in other words, is it worth doing this? Is this really the way in which we should proceed, or rather, should we not try to really raise the issue that we need a radical alternative altogether in the States today, a radical alternative that keeps together investments for the creation of jobs, for infrastructure and so on, but also an anti-racist, anti-sexist politics, and doesn't force us to make a choice between the two. So this would be my position. Another thing, by the way, I think another thing that would be necessary to do is really to have a campaign on the electoral system, because I think these elections are really showing the absurdity and irrationality of the electoral system. So, because de facto a minority of the voters have voted for Trump, and I think this campaign would have also the sense of raising the issue that there is a legitimate demand for radical change that is taking place in the States that cannot find a real equal or a real representation in the two main parties, in the Republican and in the Democratic Party, and this is an issue that has to do with democracy, but it has to do with the future of the country. And I would say that we should really work on a political project that actually opens up a space for alternative voices, so that opens up a space against this cage of the two-party system.
Well. Cinzia Arruzza, the piece is The Dangers of Anti-Trumpism in the Jacobin, professor at the New School of Philosophy. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Hey, it's Sam Seder. Why don't you subscribe to this channel? You can do so right over here. Subscribe.